policy that is actually popular amongst pretty much all Americans, if you look at the polling, is this bill that just passed the House, the SAVE Act, which would require people in voting in federal elections to do this crazy thing called, prove that they're eligible to vote in the elections. Now, the House passed this finally, saying, hey, you need your driver's license and a birth certificate or a U.S. passport and be able to vote. You need to be able to show that you're a citizen in order to vote. The problem is, it still has to get through the Senate. Alexis, do you think there are enough libs on the other side of the aisle to get enough, to peel off enough to get to that 60 vote threshold to do something that I think pretty much every American thinks is a sane idea?
I mean, I think that this is just something that we can strongly say Democrats don't want to protect our elections, which seems like an obvious statement given the last, 4 years, but it really is the last and final straw. They're doing everything they can to avoid this SAVE Act. They don't want just American citizens to vote, and that shows us two things. It shows us that they want illegals and will encourage illegals to vote in our American elections. And two, that they know they can't win without them. If you lose the people, if you peel off the population that you are allowing to run amok in this country and that you are inviting in you're promising them things, you're giving them different benefits. This is something that we've seen as a problem in a lot of leftist administrations, is that they start promising people who aren't citizens here and come illegally, specifically illegally. They promise them all this stuff. There are NGOs, as we've seen with USAID, limping them along the pathway to get into this country. Heck, they even made an app to say, hey, if you're illegal, please sign up and come into our country. I mean, it's as easy as, ordering your groceries. It's really ridiculous. And they're saying, hey, we want you here. We want you to vote in our elections because we know that if we promise you something, it is a transactional act and you will go to the polls and you will vote for us without sharing your ID, without anything to prove. I mean, it's pretty basic that you have an American election, you only have American citizens voting in the election. I mean, it's pretty fundamental, right? And so, I'm interested to see how this vote ends up shaking out in the Senate, but I think that the messaging that needs to get us across the finish line is that, if you do not vote for this, you do not want America to succeed. This is clearly something that's tearing apart the fabric of the United States, and they're playing a media game with it, of course. I mean, I even saw some propaganda today from the left saying that the SAVE Act makes it so that married women cannot vote. I would love for them to explain how they got there in a reasonable sense. I mean, they try and explain it and they say, it's hard to prove that your married last name isn't, they make it this whole, you need to show two forms of documentation. Look, besides the fact that America would turn red if that was the case, we won't go there. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, I'm all for the 19th, but I'm just saying, it's completely egregious that they would try and peddle this as a last-ditch effort. They know this means the midterms for them. They know this means elections coming up for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Brandon, what this reeks of, and Alexis kind of hit on it, is it feels like belittling to a sense that for some reason Democrats think, minorities are just too stupid to get voter ID or to get an ID in order to be able to vote. Can you kind of speak to the broader scope of that, of the left kind of belittling the ideas of the people that generally fall in line but aren't so much anymore?
Right, for sure. So we've seen this trend for years now where the Democratic Party, they're hanging on because of suburban white women. I mean, they're basically suburban white women are like propping up the party completely at this point because we've seen so many Hispanic people, Black people walking away, waking up and realizing that they're being lied to and exploited and manipulated by the Democrats. And for so long, the Black community was always the community that the political left and the Democrats treated as basically, and okay, I don't want to use the word I want to use, but they treated them like they're the stupidest people on the, I don't know to what degree we can go there on your show, but they treated them like they're the stupidest people on the face of the earth and really infantilized this community. And it's honest to God, I mean, if it wasn't so offensive, it would be extremely humorous to acknowledge that they're now treating suburban white women as more stupid than they have thought that Black people were this entire time. Because now they're basically telling white women, like, look, if you're married, you're not going to be able to vote because, your last name is different than it was when you're. it's the dumbest thing on the face of the earth. But I do think that the Democratic Party has never been more out of touch with their base.
Yeah.
Their polling numbers have never been lower. And when you look at what just happened in Wisconsin, where overwhelmingly the people of Wisconsin voted for voter ID, they want this to be enshrined into their law. Even Democrat voters want this. But I think that their base recognizes that if they're not able to fearmonger and propagandize and try to scare people into believing constantly that the sky is falling, not to mention dividing people along identity lines, they really don't have a party. So I think the question becomes, even if their voting constituents want voter ID laws, are the elected officials in DC going to vote for what their constituents want, or are they going to vote against the wishes of the voter base in order to maintain their party by creating division?